I'm going to start with the loudest thing I ever heard, that made no sound, at all the kind of sound that splits you open in the middle of a quiet kitchen. And if you've ever carried grief like a brick in your chest, you already know what I mean. Two little boys laughed without a single note leaving their mouths. Their father froze in the doorway, like a statue that just remembered it used to be human. And I stood there thinking, is this what it feels like when love learns a new language? Tell me, can love speak when words don't exist? My name is Imani, two ends, one heart that's been told it's too soft and somehow kept beating anyway. I grew up in South Carolina, where summer sticks to your skin and oak trees hold shade like secrets. My little brother Isaiah was born deaf, and we didn't have much, but we had hands and time and patience. We made a language out of both, and when he passed, I made a promise to use what he taught me for somebody who needed it more than I did. The day I met the Whitmores, I walked through iron gates into a Charleston mansion that swallowed sound. The gravel didn't dare crunch, the doors refused to slam. Even the air felt trained not to draw attention. People say rich houses echo, this one went quiet, the way a person does when they're trying not to cry. He met me in the foyer, the billionaire everyone whispered about, Alexander Whitmore, navy suit, crisp, everything handsome, in the way a man could be if his face remembered how to soften. You're the caretaker, he said, not a question, just a decision, standing on 2 feet for the twins. Liam and Lucas were 3 deaf and motherless. Their mom, Grace, had died, giving them life, and grief had poured itself into every corner of that home like cement. Nothing prepares you for the first look, 2 small boys sitting at a tiny table, hands in their laps. Eyes so serious it hurt to meet them straight on, no reaching for toys, no tears, no scanning faces, the way toddlers do when they're hungry for attention. It was like they lived in a room behind a window no one else could find the door to. I did what I always do on day 1 I moved. I wiped countertops, folded dish towels, narrated what I was doing in a soft running stream, not because they could hear me, but because rhythm steadies the body. Blue bowl, apple slices cut into triangles, tiny, careful. I set the bowl down, and nothing happened. No hunger, no curiosity, just 2 little boys staring into a distance that didn't include me. If it were you, what would you have done? Would you push the bowl closer, take a small hand and place the apple in it? Speak louder, as if volume could cross a wall like that. Or would you back away, afraid to scare them further? I remembered Isaiah pressing my chin to turn my face toward him, see me, his hands would say. And I did, I always did. 2 weeks passed like that, me orbiting their silence, smiling, exaggerating gestures, staging whole soap operas with socks. While I folded laundry, not chasing them, just staying where they could find me if they chose. Some days, I felt like a ghost with a broom. Other days, I felt like a candle no one asked to light. Alexander moved through the house like a rumor, early mornings, late nights, always at the edges, always behind glass doorways and hallways, turning him into a spectator. Grief had given him a rule book. Don't be seen, don't be heard, don't risk breaking again, and he followed it. Then the morning that changed everything, sky steel gray, kitchen cool and still, I noticed Lucas watching me around the edges, testing my outline, and Liam chewing his sleeve the way kids do when they need to self-soothe. I set the knife down, wiped my palms on my jeans, reached into my bag for a tiny Bluetooth speaker, with Isaiah's initials scratched into the back. Music. In a house like that felt like smuggling in freedom. My hand shook, not gonna lie. I didn't blast it. I'd never do that. I let a soul classic hum at the lowest volume rhythm, more than sound enough bass to be felt in bones and countertop and tile. I didn't speak. I let my hips find the beat, small at first, then bigger, playful, like a memory you're brave enough to hold again. My eyes stayed soft, my hands loose, an invitation, not a demand. Nothing, and then a tap, tiny, deliberate. Liam nudged the chair leg with his sneaker. I swallowed the praise, trying to jump out of my throat. Kept moving, arms like ribbons, one slow spin, braids catching air like they were laughing. Lucas blinked, the corner of his mouth twitched, and then it happened. The laugh that wasn't a laugh, high and choked and invisible to ears, but it cracked the air anyway. He slid off the chair, Liam followed. Suddenly, we were three bodies that didn't remember where joy lived, finding it together on a kitchen floor. Pattern interrupt. Wait, I want you to see this. Liam rocked side to side like a tree, learning wind. Lucas hopped in place, mess and miracle. I dropped to my knees, so our eyes were level, and clapped 1, 2, 3, big and silly, so they could match the motion. They clapped back offbeat and perfect. Lucas grabbed my wrist and tried to spin me. I let him, laughing from a part of me I'd boarded up for years. It wasn't therapy, it wasn't a plan, it was life. That's when the air shifted, that sixth sense you get when someone steps into your circle, even if you can't hear them. I looked up. He was in the doorway, Alexander briefcase loose in his hand, like his fingers forgot what to do with it. He didn't breathe, didn't blink. A man who'd turned himself into a statue, to survive, forced to watch the one thing statues can't stand change. The briefcase slipped, hit the floor with a thud, only he heard the boys didn't startle. They were chasing rhythm and expression and the shape of my hands. I looked at him and didn't look away. I wanted him to know, I see you too, not the money, the father. After that, he didn't speak to me for 2 days. He nodded like a man who didn't trust his voice to carry anything light and real. But the house started loosening anyway. The twins found me in rooms. They'd never stepped into the piano room, where nobody touched the lid, the reading nook with pillows too perfect to lean on. I narrated chores like a children's show. No one asked for Mr. Broom on patrol, I'd whisper. Lucas would grab the end of the handle like I'd deputized him. I had whole arcs for laundry, jealous crew socks, dramatic ankle socks, a scandalous missing pair. Liam pressed a cartoon eye to his cheek and waited to see if it would whisper back. Alexander noticed crumbs on a hallway runner that used to be allergic to crumbs, a wrong spoon. In the right drawer, tiny spoons suddenly used. He noticed the twins orbiting me not because I was special, but because I refused to force what grief had locked up. He watched from doorways like he was trying to learn a song he hadn't heard before. You could feel the push and pull in him, anger at how easy it looked, guilt that it wasn't him, hope so sharp it hurt to hold. Confession time. I didn't bring magic into that house. I brought my brother's ghost and a spiral notebook after dishes, after good nights. I lit a candle because screens feel like shouting in houses like that. And I traced ASL signs in pencil. My fingers shaking at the edges play. Happy together, thank you, Mama, Papa. The English words were there only to keep my brain anchored. What mattered were the shapes, the intent in motion. The first morning I tried, I sat on the floor and signed play, waited, signed it again, waited, added. Happy tapped my chest so gently, it could have been missed. Liam's eyes met mine. His hand stumbled through the shape. Intention is its own grammar. Then Lucas copied him messier. And that's how it begins. Not pretty, just present. They were choosing, not compliance, connection. Alexander walked in with a phone in one hand and coffee in the other, numbers running across his eyes, and hit a wall only he could see. His sons, making meaning with their hands, laughing without noise, alive without words, and none of it required him. He backed away like the floor had tilted. Yeah, that happened. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. He scheduled a visit with Dr. Nolan, a reputable clinician, with a suit that said he worshipped precision. I hoped I was wrong about him. I wasn't. He entered the sunroom, and the boys' folded bodies turning inward, eyes dropping a no. That had nothing to do with defiance and everything to do with safety. I crouched, gave them time, breath. Slow hands loose, but they stayed locked up. Nolan clicked his pen. Common pattern, he said, bored in a way that made me hate the word parents. Report anecdotal improvements under observation. There's non-participation, emotional mimicry. At best, he wrote it like a verdict, not a note. Alexander's jaw flexed. Are you saying they haven't improved? He asked. Voice too tight to hide, they signed. They laughed, they connected, the doctor shrugged. Surface behavior, not developmental progress. Do you think that's fair, that strangers get to stamp a moment they don't understand, while the people who live inside it are told to be quiet about what they've seen? If it were you, would you beg him to reconsider, throw him out, or stand still and keep the boys safe by not escalating? I swallowed my fury, because yelling would have been about me, not them. And then the twist hit from a place I wasn't ready for. Alexander turned to me, and the softness in him hardened fast. You made me believe, he muttered low now. I look like a fool. The words landed like a slap made of ice. Pattern interrupt. It hurt. I kept my spine tall and said, calm. I didn't make you believe anything you heard their joy. You felt it. He looked at me like I'd taken something from him. That's the part nobody warns you about. When hope returns, it doesn't ask permission. And the person you needed it from most might blame you for the ache of getting it back. After that, I pulled back. I still cooked and cleaned and read with my face and hands. But I stopped dancing in the kitchen, stopped humming over laundry. Not punishment, self-protection. The boys felt it the way children feel, everything entirely. Liam drifted from his favorite spoon. Lucas lined blocks instead of building with them. The house didn't return to grief. It slipped into something worse. Polite emptiness that pretends it's fine. Then the house itself did what I couldn't. A closet door coughed open on tired hinges, and Lucas found a picture frame under winter scarves. He brought it to me with dust on his fingers. Solemn as a priest, Grace smiled from the glass, newborns tucked in her arms. Hello, I'm still here? I wiped the glass with my shirt, set it on the counter where little eyes could find it, and said soft, so it mattered, Mama. The next morning, Liam stood before the photo for a long time, fingers trembling. He turned, found me, and signed it. Open palm from chin out, imperfect and perfect at the same time. Lucas copied him. I nodded. Eyes hot, signed it back. Mama, we did that for a while, building a bridge to a woman whose absence had been the loudest thing in that house. Alexander rounded the corner and stopped. He saw the photo. He saw me. He saw them. We all froze. Then Liam turned to his father and signed it again. Mama, and something in Alexander cracked so loud you'd swear you heard it. He slid down the cabinet. Like his knees forgot the plan, he put his face in his hands and let it come hot and unguarded and unforgiving in the best way. Lucas touched his wrist with the tender seriousness of a child who understands more than we give him credit for. Alexander looked up like a man surfacing after years. Underwater, he raised his hands, clumsy and brave, and signed, Papa did it again. When they didn't move, Papa. The boys mirrored him, awkward and glorious. He laughed through tears, pulled them both in. It wasn't neat. It was real. I stepped back. Sometimes, love requires a witness, not a hero, you know what I mean? The next morning, I set the speaker on the counter and paused. Asked with my eyes. They nodded. I pressed play. The twins didn't wait for me. They signed dance with those grins that split your ribs, and then a shadow in the doorway. Alexander, shame on one shoulder, courage on the other. Liam signed again, dance, Papa, and I watched a man pick courage on purpose. His first steps were wooden and wrong. the kind you'd hide if you cared what people thought. The boys didn't care. They clapped, grabbed his sleeves, made room for him to be bad at something, which is the only way we ever get good. That night, he knocked on my door with a yellowed envelope in his hand. "I wrote this to Grace after the boys were born," he said, eyes on the floor. "Never mailed it. He asked me to read it because sometimes the only way through your own words is to let someone else carry them." The letter was an apology, a confession, a promise he didn't know how to keep. The last line was underlined twice: "If they ever laugh, if they ever find joy, I'll know you found a way back to them." I looked up and said what I believed. "She'd be proud of you, not because you were perfect, but because you didn't let your pain define them." He shook his head, then nodded, then sat like a man who had finally put something heavy down. We started spending mornings in the garden, tiny fingers pressing seeds into warm dirt like pocket-sized prayers. I signed hope as we planted. Alexander joined us without announcing himself. Lucas placed a seed in his father's palm with the dignity of a knight knighting a king. Alexander's hands trembled as he signed. "I learn wrong. Angle wrong, shape exactly right." Liam laughed and corrected his fingers. That laughter felt like church one afternoon. Lucas pointed at the first green sprout, touched his chest, and signed. Grace, none of us spoke, we breathed. We opened the gate a little, invited a few neighborhood kids and 2 therapists, I trust. One older and steady, one young and bright. We baked cookies, burnt on one side and raw on the other. Alexander wore an apron with glitter letters that said, "World's Best Chef," because Liam insisted, and watching a billionaire surrender to glitter is a healing language. Money will never buy the twins. Signed hello to a little girl who blinked and then copied. The yard became a study in belonging. Some kids spoke with hands, some didn't. No one cared. Alexander sat beside me on the steps, handed me lemonade and said it plain. "You brought them back to me and me back to them." I shook my head. "You were never far," I said. "You just needed to know where to start again." He didn't argue, he let the words sit the way truth should. Kindergarten arrived faster than any of us were ready for. Small backpacks by the door, shoelaces that took Alexander 10 minutes because feelings turned fingers to thumbs on the drive the boys signed. Brave to each other, and I had to stare out the window so I didn't cry. Before 8, drop-off was careful, knees bent, hands, sure words simple. "We'll be right here when it ends," Alexander said. His voice steady, the boys didn't need to hear it to feel it. A body knows truth when it stands close. Back home, he hung a framed photo over the mantel, Grace smiling with the twins as newborns, me laughing months later, stitched from different days. "But whole in spirit, I want them to grow up knowing they have 2 homes," he said, "one with her memory, one with your presence." I signed family, no speech, just the word. He let it settle. Now here's the part that might rub a month later. Dr. Nolan called to ask if the boys had shown sustained progress. I could have recited vocabulary and routines and tolerance for change like an audit. Instead, I asked, "Do you think progress belongs to you if you never earned their trust?" He didn't answer. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe that's not how his job works, but it's how my work works, and I can live with that. Do you think that's fair, that so much of a child's future gets decided by whether adults can stomach being uncomfortable long enough to let connection happen? Should families have to fight this hard, with schools and systems and experts who confuse compliance with growth? Or is the real deficit our refusal to learn the language a child is already speaking? Months later, on a Saturday that smelled like cut grass and second chances, we ended up back in the kitchen, speaker humming the twins' signed dance with those wild grins. Alexander stepped in without being asked. He didn't move like a dancer, he moved like a father who'd chosen trying out loud over being perfect and silent. We spun and clapped and collapsed into a pile of arms, And if you'd told me on day one that this house would feel like this, I might have smiled and said, I hope so, but even then, I wouldn't have pictured something this ordinary, this holy. I don't know what you're carrying right now. Maybe a house that's too quiet. A diagnosis that wrote your family into a corner. A memory. You can't walk around without scraping your shin. I know this presence without expectation can change a room. Hands that say, I see you before. Mouths say anything. Can rewrite a day, and imperfect effort counts more than perfect plans. The loudest miracles often make no sound. So here's where I leave you with a knot to pull on. Not to be cruel, but to be honest, we talk about access and inclusion like slogans, but in real homes, they're daily choices. We either fund with time and tenderness, or we don't. Should a child's way of communicating be treated as a deficit until it translates neatly for us, or is our unwillingness to learn their language the real deficit? If it were you in that sunroom with that doctor with those twins, what would you have done? Throw him out, beg him to stay close the door, and protect the quiet like a winter garden? Tell me what you think, argue with me if you need to. Maybe you've lived this from another angle. Maybe you're living it right now. If this story hit somewhere you keep guarded, if it gave you hope or made you mad or made you breathe a little easier, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me which moment you felt the most. Tell me if you think Dr. Nolan was right, wrong, or stuck in a system that can't see what it can't measure. Share this with someone learning to listen beyond words. And if you want more honest, messy, stubbornly human stories told like real life, hit subscribe, ring the bell, add your voice to this little corner where we practice being brave together.